Welcome everyone to the Cardano Effect podcast, episode 59. The purpose of this podcast is to take high-level developer information and projects that are occurring within the space and break them down into bite-sized, consumable pieces of information for everyday use. I'm your host, Philippe, and let's get this podcast started. Rick is the other host of the Cardano Effect podcast today, and we have a very special podcast series that's been going on. This is actually our second episode that we're recording in a day, although we're not releasing it same day. We recorded this on Saturday, by the way, so it should be Monday by the time you're viewing this. And this is a big week for everyone within the Cardano community. The first testnet snapshot is going to happen on Tuesday, November 12th, and it's expected that the first download for the testnet version is going to be available around Thursday. We're not sure, we're not 100% sure yet, but those are the tentative dates according to Charles's last AMA. So the previous episode that you saw earlier today, it was all about having stake pool operators on. And we have a couple other stake pool operators joining us again today. And we have a repeat that came from the morning show. So we're so excited to have them on again. And without further ado, I want to remind everyone that none of what we say on this podcast is financial advice. Remember, you are your best financial advisor. And if you don't think you are, you need to find someone who's qualified to do so. Rick, how are you doing today? What's going on? What's happening?
Hey, I'm doing great, Philippe. Thank you for asking. Thank you for the introduction. I would also like to thank IOHK for sponsoring this podcast. We very much appreciate your support in helping make this podcast possible. I would also like to thank our many viewers out there and remind any newcomers to the podcast that this podcast is available on over 50 audio apps and all major streaming services. So if you want to listen to the audio version while you're driving in your car or while you're working out, feel free to grab that audio version. We use very high quality audio. So with that out of the way, I would like to thank Mark Stopka for returning to the podcast today. Thank you, Mark, for being on here. And also a person very familiar to the entire Cardano community, Old Crypto Geek is with us. And you probably know him from either Twitter or Telegram. He's been an extremely helpful person to the entire community. He's always ready and willing to help. And I very much appreciate his volunteer efforts that he puts into the community. And he also has built some software and he'll get to that himself. So I would like to pass it over to Old Crypto Geek. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. And tell us a little bit about the name of your stake pool and any of the goals that you have for your stake pool, and what's the software you're working on? Tell us about
that. Thanks, Rick. Thanks for having me on today. So yeah, I'm running Phoenix Staking is the name of our pool. We've been operating in testnet since pretty much the beginning, I guess. We've been running a private testnet on the side. Mark and yourself are familiar with it.
Casper.
Casper, basically it's an interface for interacting with Cardano through Jormungandr and the JCLI. Its aim is just to make the user experience a little bit more cleaner, smoother.
And it does. I'll vouch for it. If for someone who's good with the command line interface, it definitely does.
Yeah, we've got a GUI that's that we're working on as well as the next iteration, but really working on the back-end functionality of the software right now.
Cool. And I noticed you released that GUI under Codex Data Systems. So if people want to look it up on GitHub, it's under Codex Data Systems, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you.
That's how you get to Casper, is through the Codex Data System that Old Crypto Geek and his partners in crime have, or his partners in software development have out there on the GitHub.
On the internet,
yeah. And so on this podcast, we're gonna shift gears a little bit. This morning we did kind of a round robin, or on the previous podcast we kind of did a round robin. This podcast we're gonna do a little bit more of a deep dive on a lot of the different aspects. We're also going to talk about how a new pool operator can get up and running. What skills do they need to have? What kind of hardware do they need to have? And that kind of leads us into our next question that, Mark, you're welcome to jump in here and discuss as well.
Rick,
but,
Just
Yeah.
want to interrupt you real quick. Can we have Mark just reintroduce his pool for everyone that missed the
Yeah, I'm not familiar.
yesterday's
Oh, sorry.
yes everyone that didn't watch this morning's episode. So Mark, can you introduce your pool? Let us know a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So for the testnet, I'm gonna name my pool Better Late Than Never, since we are a little bit behind the schedule. But that was uncalled for,
That was a dig. That was a dig.
Okay. So, and the primary goal for myself will, of course, be to run a profitable enterprise while at the same time find as many bugs as there are before we roll out to the mainnet. And as the mainnet approaches, I'm not even sure if I'm gonna run a pool or not. That will depend on how the system requirements will look like, what the output from the testnet will be like, and so on and so forth.
Understand.
Okay. Do you have a URL called Better Late Than Never, or is that just a?
No, I'm just gonna put it as a third level FQDN under the domain I already have.
Okay. You can put that in a tag, right? Isn't there like 64 bytes of data you can put in a tag whenever you make pools or something like that? That'll be pretty funny if you do that.
Yeah, the name will be able to put in a tag as well as in the shortcut.
Okay. All right.
And just to let everyone know who's watching this, I mean, if you weren't at the summit or you didn't see images from the summit, when you are delegating your ADA to a stake pool, should you choose Mark, old Crypto Geek, my stake pool, Rick's stake pool, anyone's staking pool that you've seen, everyone's going to have sort of like a stock ticker within the Daedalus interface or Yoroi interface, and you'll be able to identify the pools that you want to delegate to based on that little stock ticker. So I believe that when the time comes, everyone's going to be giving you the name of their pool and then that little abbreviation, or it's very analogous to a stock ticker. So you'll be able to find your favorite pools pretty quickly and pretty easily. And the interface looks very cool.
It does.
Have you seen the Yoroi interface as well?
I have not seen.
Okay.
Have you?
No.
I'm assuming that with their Seiza blockchain explorer, it looked very impressive. So I'm sure that they're going to have a lot of the same graphical elements that are coming from their applications onto their staking platform. But it should be interesting how they interpret staking and how they visualize it after Daedalus shows us their visualization.
I've seen screen captures of, I can't recall exactly what it was, but it was
Center.
Yeah, Delegation Center from Yoroi. So there was screen cap. I didn't see a good visual like I did see on Daedalus though, yet.
The Daedalus ones
I do remember
uploaded
seeing
to GitHub, right?
They have images there.
The Daedalus ones been uploaded to GitHub.
Yeah, I saw those. All right, so next what we're going to get is a screen share from old Crypto Geek, and he's going to show us what he was talking about.
So as we were saying here, this is input outputs GitHub pool, GitHub input outputs GitHub, and the repo is the Shelley testnet stake pool registry. And it's describing the process a pool will go through to register their ticker symbols to make the pool selection process easier for users.
Okay.
This is the technical side of things, how that ticker symbol system is actually going to be implemented. But this is pretty new. But if the users want to, maybe we can throw these links up afterwards.
Yeah,
Definitely.
step 6. Yeah, step 6 is a lot more obvious right there.
So it says that the ticker must be either 3 or 4 characters long, all uppercase alphabetic string. So you're just going to have these short little ticker symbols to identify certain pools.
That's it. Yeah.
Yep,
So
it needs to be ASCII characters. So
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
it won't be any emojis or anything like that.
You know what's interesting? I mean, if IOHK removes the limit of, or their goals of 1,000, and in the future, let's say there's 10,000 pools, will there be the bidding wars for those certain premium tickers? I mean, especially if it's very used. I mean, an institution coming in may want a particular ticker symbol, and that might be taken, and people may be selling it just like domain names or something like that.
Yeah, like the
Just
NB
give me a
ticker for
business
New Balance.
idea, you know.
Mark is.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna go through FTSE 500s and register all the tickers.
Yeah. Mark, tell them what you did. I was like, what? Was that you, Mark? I said I couldn't get any faucet funds. That's because you were spamming the faucet. Was that you?
No, it wasn't me.
It was somebody else?
Okay.
Yeah.
You gave him an idea, Philippe.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, I suggested something. I suggested a bad idea. So Mark is going to be the first one sitting on a whole bunch of ticker symbols.
I told you I've been watching this for weeks, guys.
You've done it.
Permutation of 4 characters by 28 in the ASCII alphabet. That's gonna be easy.
Yeah,
It's gonna be one-liner in parallel.
The trick is the pledge address needs to be associated with it, right? So without that pledge address.
So you're going to reserve OCG and Phoenix.
Well, I don't want to give away all my secrets right now, Rick, but
okay.
No, we'll once we're properly formed, because we've been in. I mean, I think we're all in the same boat as far as pool operators go. Everybody's had conversations with individuals who are looking to are excited to stake and want to get ahead of the curve and want to find out who's on the leading edge here, right? Mm-hmm. So, but it's mostly conversations. You know, I think a lot of people are keeping their cards close to their chest. They don't really want to necessarily divulge how much they're holding too far in advance and that type of thing, if at all, right? So,
yep. Plus, most of the ADA is in the hands of Japan, as far as I recall, and there's not a whole lot of nodes in Japan, so I don't know what's going to happen whenever we do these snapshots. We're going to find out, though.
Well, it's about outreach, I think, you know, and the networks that you build. You know, Emergo and IOHK both have a very strong presence in Japan. You know, I look at people like Darren Camus, for example. He's kind of bridging that gap. So, I mean, you know.
You mean Ken Kodama?
Ken Kodama, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so,
yeah,
you know, the opportunities are there.
Okay, good. Cool. So, you know, we're going to do many subjects on these podcasts with the stake pool operators. And one of the subjects is going to be how to keep a secret. That's going to be a very short podcast.
I can just stop sharing this. Get out there now.
Yep. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for showing that. I did not see that part of the spec before. There's a lot of documents out there. I have not seen that. That was good.
Well, I don't think that was really part of the spec per se. It's just something that needs to happen, right? It's just logical to build that system.
Yes,
it is. It is. And the URLs, it says up to 64 bytes for URL. I already tested mine. I got a really long URL. It's only like 30 bytes long. My URL is Digital Fortress Online, and it's not that big. So I think that 64 is a lot. That's a big URL.
Yes, it is. Yeah. It is. Interesting. It should be fun. We're going to find out soon enough how all this works. And just if you're interested in staking, make sure you remove your ADA off of exchanges and hardware wallets. Keep it in Daedalus or Yoroi. And remember that if you miss the second snapshot for the incentivized testnet, you will not be able to stake within the incentivized testnet. And we do not know how long this period of staking will happen or will take place. It could be a couple months. It could be 6 months. So if you want to get those rewards, make sure that you are ready to participate for the snapshot. Let's switch topics, Rick. Wait, go ahead, Mark.
Do you guys think there will be a secondary market for the testnet tokens?
No.
That's a very interesting question, actually, Mark, because
I would be willing if there would be a big enough discount to buy some, because I think that the testnet is going to drag for quite some time, and it may create an opportunity once you will know what the incentives will be.
So there really should be a futures market on testnet tokens right now.
BitMEX
program that over the weekend.
Yeah. I would think there'd be a secondary market if you already saw a spike. Not financial advice, but I was thinking if the snapshot, we might see it near the end of the month, but if it was a big enough deal in the testnet, then people would take their other tokens, trade them for ADA, get the snapshot, and then trade them back to whatever they want.
Well, you just disclosed my secret plan for the second snapshot.
There are no secret plans. Yeah.
Well, I was planning on it. I actually came up with that idea today. So,
yeah.
Traditionally, when these kinds of things happen, when there's a snapshot or a fork or something to that effect, I mean, there's always a sell-off. Almost every time. You know, it's like without fail. So, I mean, on the primary markets, I do expect to see the same thing.
Of course, yes, I agree with you, and we're probably going to end up right back at 4 cents. So whatever our bump is. So
well, I mean, I like to price it in satoshis, you know. But if you're talking 500 sats to 300 sats, you know, if you look back when this first came on the market in 2017, early or late 16 or what, I don't even know what it was.
Late 2017.
Late 2017.
September 28th, 2017.
Yeah, September, October, it was fall, whatever year it was anyways. I remember that much. But it was, you know, at that time trading 250 sats, 200 sats when it first came on the Bittrex, right? So if you look at it from a historical point of view, I mean, I don't know. I'm not the finance guy, but.
So where are we sitting now at sats? Because I speak euros.
I speak dollars.
I don't know. I can pull it up, but last I looked, we were around 400, 450.
Okay.
Kind of ranging between 400 and 500.
The bottom line, it'll probably pump and dump, not financial advice.
Yes.
But we do. Hey,
markets are wild, man. This is crypto. Like, you know, get a helmet, get ready, because this is wild business.
People have been involved with this project for so long that I don't think it's going to phase most people. The people that are here are the long-term hodlers. I mean, we've weeded out a lot of people that were interested in crypto. So it's the last of the last left out here. So it's we're either riding it to zero or we're going all the way to the moon. Right.
I already said in the morning that I'm going to the moon and run a stake pool there.
Yeah, so you did.
Go there and run a stake pool. All right. So
nodes. Speaking of running nodes, if I could use the opportunity to segue, we were talking earlier about the low-powered nodes, ROX Pi. Mark, do you want to speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think it's not very pragmatic to run like a professional stake pool on that. Because of it lacks ECC memory, it doesn't have any redundancies regarding power and so on and so forth. But I think it's good to deploy it. You can give it as a gift for Christmas or whatever to your friends and family who are interested in decentralization and liquid democracy and so on and so forth, and just plug into the network. If it will be if the Cardano on ROX will be supporting like UPnP for net traversal and so on and so forth, it could create good passive nodes that would just relay blocks.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree. I mean, I was thinking. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I agree with you, Mark. As far as running a professional node, a fully redundant system, it may have like these types of devices probably play a role in that, but as a primary means, it's probably not an effective solution.
Yeah,
especially that the ROX Pi are better hardware for sure than the like a Raspberry Pi, but yeah, you definitely want to be on a server.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the Xeon ARM processors, ECC memory, or something industrial grade. And Rock Pis are cool. They're great for learning.
Absolutely. They're
and monitoring.
Inexpensive and great systems to teach kids, for example. And a lot of people have reached out to me asking about these things who are interested in just staking independently. And I think that's really the biggest draw for the average user is just the ability to have that sovereignty, right? Not relying on a node online, but just plug it in on your desk and stake your bit. And you may not be producing blocks because you may not have enough stake to do so, right? But if it's a low powered device that, runs stably, and it doesn't really cost you anything, then the trade-off over time may actually, the benefit may be there.
Yeah, definitely. For somebody who doesn't want to run either a community or a commercial effort with regards to the stake pools, but just wants to be independent of the others, it may be a viable solution for that.
Totally, absolutely.
I agree with that.
I guess the break even for that will be somewhere sitting at like 100, 150K ADA. That would be like when it pays for its own electricity bill.
I think you're probably right. I think that's probably the range versus, where if you're going to run a commercial operation, the costs are a lot higher. And your break even point, those pools are probably going to have to be looking around the tens of millions of ADA staked to them. So,
yeah, my estimate was about 16 to 20 million ADA could be a possible. About 20 million might be a saturation point, but I don't know. I just estimate.
I think the saturation point is higher than that. I think saturation is probably 45, but at full distribution, anyways. I'm not sure. Maybe more like 35 or 30 or whatever we're at right now. But that's given 1,000 pools, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, bandying numbers around, I think, 10 million is going to be a competitive, kind of the competitive threshold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are, yeah. So there was sorry, Philippe.
I just hope that to bounce off what Mark and Old Crypto Geek were saying, I think Rock Pis, it's a good initiative for that individual solo staker who wants the autonomy and not necessarily wants to delegate or just wants to control their funds. But me, the picture that I see, the landscape that I see, I want to see a lot of commercial solutions. I want to see this project serious. I don't want everyone running a little Raspberry Pi or Rock Pi in their bedroom on their modem or slow internet or whatever home internet that they have. I don't think it's serious. I think that when investors come in and they see if like all 1,000 pools were running on a Rock Pi, that's what we would, that's the definition of Cardano. That's what people would see Cardano as. Not necessarily that it could run on Rock Pis, but that it's running on low powered products. And I don't think that conveys a sense of seriousness, security, and I think that there are issues with that long term. You need to have business solutions, proper business solutions, and you need to have powerhouses that are competing in order to give it that name brand, that name validity.
Especially if you want big brands and big enterprises to use the chain for their financial conduct.
Exactly.
I agree with you. I think that I agree with you in part. I think decentralization of the network is very important, and the network as a whole will, we'll be able to view the network as a whole. I think that you'll see those larger industrial solutions come about naturally because they're economically incentivized to do so. But just as the average user is incentivized to be sovereign, I think that you'll see this decentralization happening on these low-powered devices at scale, in parallel to these industrial solutions. I think both are very important.
They are, which leads us to the next question that we had in here was, what hardware do you think would be effective? What hardware do you use? What hardware do you recommend? So what hardware are you guys using, especially USCG? Mark spoke briefly this morning, but guys, feel free to tell us what hardware are you using and what hardware do you think will be effective for a good full-powered pool? And I'm not talking, we don't need Apple and IBM and Google working on this. I think you guys can do this. I think you guys can pull this off. What do you think is good hardware?
Myself, I mean, for testnet stuff, I've been running just DigitalOcean or Google Cloud servers, because costs are a factor, right? This is not, it's, you have to pay for all the resources you use, whether you're a home gamer or whatnot, right? Miners know this story very well. So keeping costs low is paramount. But at the same time, an investment in hardware pays off in the long run, right? So we're going to be using a combination of the two to guarantee our pool's uptime and taking things like redundant power supplies into consideration and software backups and automated monitoring tools and that type of thing. But again, all of these things take resources and planning.
So DigitalOcean, you can get some pretty good industrial grade, high uptime.
Well, like I say, DigitalOcean is great as a cloud provider. I'm using them strictly for the testnet phase right now. You can spin up a droplet for $40 a month or whatever. So.
What about bandwidth? How much does that cost?
Well, like I say, that's my costs right now are pretty minimal on the testnet, but I think that we'll see that change as traffic starts increasing because we haven't seen a lot of transaction volume. Most of the packets have been just empty blocks and lots and lots and lots of empty blocks and that type of thing. But testing is evolving. Right now, getting a stable network has been the biggest focus, which has really happened quite quickly, I think, considering how many people are, if you have to consider what's happening right now. There's hundreds of people trying to connect to 4, 5, 6 computers or whatever servers that IOHK is running as trusted peers. A lot of these people that are doing this have improperly configured settings, have incompatible, their node configs are incompatible with the software they're running, or they don't understand the upgrade process, or they've got a broken build, or whatever the problem
Their
is.
port forwarding is wrong.
Yeah, the port forwarding is a huge problem for most people, but yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just craziness. It's not an ordered connection pattern happening on this poor network, right? But even under these circumstances, ProleteR is managing to make connections and establish new peers, and you see some people are running large amounts of RAM because they're handling hundreds and hundreds of connections. So the system is working. It's the frustration most people are having is because they don't understand how to actually make it work.
Okay, so let's say you're a consultant. I'm a new pool operator. What hardware should I buy?
Well, that's very, very dependent on you, Rick. What systems are you comfortable with? Who's actually going to be running this system? right? Like that is the question. Myself as an operator, I prefer Linux-based systems, you know, and you can pretty much buy anything and run a Linux-based system on it, you know. So I really like Dell servers. I think they're probably the best value for the dollar, you know. And if you look around, you can get a good deal on a rack-mounted server. You know, you could build a system if you were so inclined, you know. But again, it comes down to operator competency and comfortability. You know, who's running it? What do you know how to do? How are you going to do it? Make a plan. Go give her, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if someone's familiar with Windows, you can run it on Windows.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, lots of critical services run on server versions of Windows. Don't run it on Windows 10. That's a crazy idea.
Right.
But if you run it on 2016 R2, or I think 2019 is out, I don't see any problem with that. It's definitely a viable solution.
Absolutely. A lot of people are really familiar with the .NET framework, right? The Microsoft system. So totally. It makes sense.
Yeah. Is there that big of a difference between, say, Windows 10 and Windows Server that for running industrial grade software?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, it's the same comparison as comparing it to run it on the industrial server versus running it on a Rock Pi.
Windows 10 is like a crazy ex-girlfriend, man. She's spying on you.
Well, that's one thing.
What do you guys think about SUSE Linux and CentOS? Have you ever used those?
So I use CentOS for the testnet for the non-incentivized because I can publish Docker images on the public Docker hub. But for the production, I made a deal with the Czech branch of SUSE because I have a long lasting relationship with them, and they just gave me a sweet deal for that with the commercial support. So I'm gonna run the production on that.
Nice.
That's really cool.
Yeah. What about Ubuntu 18.04 LTS? Has anyone ever used that one?
That's what I'm running, just because I've always run Ubuntu. I mean, I only started even really using Linux a few years ago, and it was quite a learning curve for me, you know. So hey.
Yeah.
So I never in my life used a really Debian-based system. Yeah. So I don't know how to make like Debian packages, but I know all about making RPM packages. So I always stick with the RPM-based distros.
Right. Yeah. I'm not worried about trying to make packages or anything like that for Debian, or you know, we'll handle our packages ourselves, I guess, you know. But
yeah. Well, what 18.04 LTS is easy to use. If someone is new to Linux, I would suggest it. It's worth a try. It's free, and I believe it's pretty solid. I think so. Just my opinion. And I enjoyed using LTS. I would love to use it again.
They're all excellent in their own right. You know, the softwares or the kernels have come a long way. You know, the Linux project is awesome. It's been the learning Linux and learning how servers work has been the biggest benefit to learning about crypto for me. You know, I had to learn how to run Linux servers in order to run my Bitcoin D. You know, I didn't have to. I wanted to do it that way, I should say, right? And that whole process of learning how to run nodes, learning, you know, trying to sync an Ethereum node. Have you ever tried to do that?
Yeah. It's
Geth, I don't know.
Dude, the last time I synced an Ethereum node, it took like 680 gigabytes of my terabyte. And I'm like, delete. And it took a while. I think it took 2 days.
It wasn't until...
It took 2 days of gigabit Ethernet.
It wasn't until I used parity that I fully synced an Ethereum node. Parity is far superior to Geth, in my opinion.
Yeah. I synced an Ethereum Classic node by clicking the button on the thing on the Emerald wallet. A little while later it was synced, but on the other ones, no, not so much.
But until Cardano implements sharding, if there will be the same amount of transactions and same amount of the apps, same amount of ERC20 tokens or what have you, we're gonna run into the same issue, right? Currently, the Cardano blockchain has how many? 60 gigabytes. I think I think
on RC7.
No. I mean the mainnet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has around 60 gigs.
It's down from that though after the database was refactored, wasn't it?
Yeah, they merged the files 2 in 1, so I think it cut it by a significant amount.
Yeah, it's like 30% less or something like that. I think.
Yeah.
I guess because you save on empty descriptors, right? Because the minimal block size is like 4K for most file systems. So if you have smaller blocks, then you'd be occupying more space than you actually need. So if you merge the blocks into the one file, you're gonna have some space savings over there.
I think that we're a ways away from that sharding on Cardano and side chains and everything like that. I mean,
I actually think the side chain is gonna be quite soon, at least in Cardano terms. I think they're gonna come very shortly after the smart contracts because they will be required for interoperability. And if you look at the research, the research has been published, the research has been peer reviewed. So I think that that from the research side, we are really close or even finished because both zero knowledge proofs for proof of work and for proof of stake have been reviewed, and I think both been presented on the conference. So this is just an engineering challenge, and there isn't much of the engineering. It's just about freeing those human resources that are currently working on Shelly, and then having that deployed, having them relocated towards the side chain.
I think that's very astute, Mark.
Interesting. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. If you think Goguen is supposed to happen 1 quarter after Shelly releases in the mainnet. So given the time schedule right now, we're hitting the test net. We're probably going to start staking. Yes, yes.
If 2020,
yes.
I would say, it's. I think the test net is going to take quite some time. We're looking. If we're done by March, I'll personally be surprised. But done
with what, Shelly or Goguen?
With the Shelly test.
Yes, yeah,
that's what I thought.
I'm personally thinking of 6 months timeline for the testnet.
Mm-hmm.
Same.
Yeah, and that could be.
What do you think? Shelly mainnet. What do you guys think? When Shelly mainnet?
2020 and middle of 2020 type of thing.
Yeah, quarter 2, quarter 3 of 2020. I think maybe sometime in the summer.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's going to take a little bit more than it's going to go beyond December. We'll have incentivized. We'll have the Shelly testnet. That part's going to work before the end of 2019, but I think it's going to remain in a testnet state for quite some time because it's got to be thorough.
Pragmatic approach. I mean, Ethereum never should have launched smart contracts on mainnet. This testnet activities that took place on mainnet, basically, right? There is no need to rush. This is a financial operating system. You don't get do-overs. You don't get to roll back the chain. This is an immutable system, so you gotta get it right.
Yeah,
this is true.
Ethereum is running into immutability problems for just that reason, and the only reason I know this is because of Twitter. I'm so much
Immutability
smarter
is a central
because of
pillar. You know, that's, you know, like immutability and decentralization are, if you don't have those factors, it's pointless.
Yeah, because people put their money into what is currently existing on the chain, and you can't just say, "Oh, well, that doesn't count anymore. We're gonna do a do-over."
Commerce is built on trust.
Yeah,
Exactly. Speaking about decentralization, why don't we shift that conversation back to stake pools?
yeah.
We were speaking about it in the previous episode, and we were talking about different solutions for pools and whether or not people are going to be using cloud services. You suggested, Old Crypto Geek, that you're going to be using a combination of both, and your own hardware and cloud-based solutions. But we have people in the ecosystem, stake pool operators, that believe that you can run pools, all the pools or most of the pools can be running on cloud services, whether that's Amazon or whatever web services that people are using or virtual services that they're using. But it's going to be an existing company that has a certain level of control, and people can argue that that's a sense of centralization within a decentralized network. So, and I was bringing up the point of, when you look at Bitcoin, the argument against Bitcoin is always that there's 3 mining pools that are controlling most of the hashing power, and you always see that pie chart or that graph that shows exactly what the distribution is. And what's our pie chart going to look like in 2-3 years if most pools are running on Amazon? And do you think that there should be a mix of both?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting question. You know, there's an element of centralization in that it's a point of failure. You know, if everyone's on AWS and AWS got DDoSed, you know, on a massive scale and the whole network went down, that's the point of decentralization, right?
Don't think of it as an unthinkable event. It actually happened in 2011 with Sony. Right. That was running on AWS. It happened like 3 months later due to some errors on the AWS side itself. Last large zone failure happened in EU West, which I think is Ireland, about 6 months ago. So, you know, these events happen actually quite often if you look at the importance of AWS or GCE or Azure.
Yeah, I feel, especially considering the recent CVEs that have come out in the last little while, Heartbleed and sorry, Mark, you probably know the names better than I do, but
yeah, Spectra version 1 and Spectra version 2. Yeah. So this is actually the reason why I'm
Meltdown.
Yeah. That's the reason why I'm going with ARM architecture, because the mitigations on ARM are just much more efficient. Yeah. But actually, one thing to point out here, AVS is not susceptible to Spectra attacks because they use a Zen virtualization. And I don't know what there is in the Zen virtualization, but I spoke to a friend who works in like system security auditing, and it's one virtualization that actually works around those vulnerabilities. So, but other cloud operators are susceptible to it. Like if you look at Azure with Hyper-V and so on.
Yeah, and I think one of the threats is if you're running on a cloud service, you have a private key to your stake pool sitting on that computer out there, and if it's vulnerable, someone could get that private key. Your pool's compromised. Is that a legitimate concern?
Yeah, if they use the Spectre vulnerabilities, they could sideload a code into your machine to steal that key from a VM that runs on the same physical machine as your VM runs on.
There you go.
And we have another threat, another point of attack. It's this whole idea of I mean, we live in a very tumultuous political climate all around the world. Leaders don't necessarily understand blockchain. What if it's, it's always ban blockchain one day, then open blockchain the next day. But if the leader has enough power, companies can just shut down complete access to all crypto related projects running on those servers, and then everyone's in trouble. You're not going to be able to get back online until that embargo is up, or whatever company that decides to fight to like, if there are presidential orders or whatever leader says stop this, they've got to stop until further information. Yes, exactly. Further notice.
It doesn't even have to be the leader. It could just be their intelligence organizations trying to figure out and say, hey, I wonder how vulnerable that is. Let's go ahead and poke at it and see what happens whenever we poke it.
Exactly.
Can I share?
And also corporate and industrial espionage. Corporate and industrial espionage, someone else might say, hey, we don't like them taking our real estate, our financial services, and taking it over. So let's attack them. And they'll hire the top guns out there to do it.
Yes.
They don't need to hire the top guns. If some hedge fund's gonna be afraid of a blockchain that runs mostly on AVS, that they are going to steal their business, well, they will short AVS stock until Amazon bankrupts. I mean, they can use that much of a leverage. They can put money there.
Now.
And the extra layer.
Is there, so old Crypto Geek, let's say you're running 2 different nodes. One of them is centralized. One of them you're using, I don't know. One of them you're using Amazon. The other one you have your own server. Is there any issue if your Amazon one gets shut down, or your cloud-based solution gets shut down? Is there any issue with latency as far as the information traveling from one cloud-based solution to your personal server? What if that transaction gets stuck in the middle?
Okay.
I mean, today there was somebody asking that the Cardano.pub doesn't show all the nodes, right? Well, it doesn't show all the nodes because no node knows about all the other nodes.
Exactly.
They don't know the entire graph of the network. They know only the edges that they are connected to. So you would basically, in order to show all the nodes on the map, you would need to run all the nodes.
Yeah.
Or have enough nodes that were connected to enough of the other nodes.
Yeah. Well, but if you'd wanted the 100% certainty, then you'd need to control 100% of the nodes.
Correct.
Yeah.
You never know. No. You never fully know.
Yeah. A good example is that MM, who's running Cardano.pub, that's his anonymous call sign, is he's running 5 nodes in order to collect that, and he's picking up about 220 nodes, 212 to 220. I'm running 1, and I'm picking up like 158, or no, 192 last time I checked. So if you were to do a Venn diagram, there's overlap, but one node does not see all nodes. So it's good. It's hard to map it. It's hard to map that out, and it's hard to visualize. Maybe someone will come up with a way to visualize that.
Well, the question is, do we want it? And if we want it, the easiest way to do it is to provide people with a script that they can run on their nodes and provide some centralized service with the data that you can visualize, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have as many nodes from which you're collecting data.
Yeah, I think it's good to visualize because it builds people's confidence to be able to see how many nodes are out there and that they're communicating at an extremely high data rate and that they're reliable and that they're online. That's the key.
It also makes the network vulnerable. I guess you guys are familiar with Tor.
Yes.
So in Tor, you have a concept of relays, exit nodes, and so-called bridges.
Oh, that okay.
When you ask for bridges, the Tor never tells you about all the bridges. for the reason that if you know about all the nodes, you can ban all the nodes. If they always give away only 10 bridges from thousands, then the effort that you would need to collect all the bridge information would be too high for even China and their deep packet inspection solution to block all the bridges, and that's the only way Chinese can get on a public internet.
I didn't know that. Thank you for explaining that. So
you need to understand that every information you provide to the good actors is always available to the bad actors as well.
Right.
And the bad actors probably and usually have more information than the good actors do.
Yes, but also we've had one of the doctors from IOHK on the program who it was either Philippe Wadler or Manuel Chakravarty who said security through obscurity is a fallacy. You cannot. You have to be able to publicly show this is everything that we're doing, and it's still secure.
Yeah, but
like you can't just hide it and say, "Oh, look, I hid everything," because someone's going to find it.
But there is one thing called security. That's if you look at exploitation of the system, right? So in order to exploit the system, we should rely on openness. That's why the project is open source and so on and so forth. But the next thing is denial of service. And if you give visibility to everyone, then you make the denial of service easy because, well,
I see what you're saying. They'll exploit the weakness of TCP/IP.
They will exploit the weakness of Patriot Act, and they tell Comcast block all these IP addresses.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in Czech Republic, we have the same law that obliges ISPs to block certain. Now it talks about websites, but it wouldn't be a big change in the law to say block IP addresses on the command of the government or the police.
100%. That's why I think that these private satellite systems are going to become so important.
Yeah. So actually, when Charles talked about the satellites, having the nodes running in the space, well, I actually did a little research. It costs about €500,000 to launch a Cube satellite, which could host a solution.
The Starlink network, I think, is going to become a huge influence. I think.
Starlink is the Elon Musk SpaceX network, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, it should reduce the latency.
Planning on something like 40,000 satellites or something now, I think.
Yeah, it's gonna be on lower orbit, and they are actually going to use mesh networking to communicate between one another. And in the end, if you look at the traffic from London to New York, the latency is gonna be actually lower than if you go over the fiber that is on the seabed.
It's pretty incredible.
So hedge funds gonna take great advantage of it for their high frequency trading.
Yeah.
I guess that's where the funding is going to be coming from.
Yeah.
I used to have a client who was a telco that did the networking in the data center where London Stock Exchange is hosted. And if you guys ever seen a fiber patch panel, they've been actually auctioning every single position in that patch panel. So if you wanted like slot number 1, which was the closest to the server, you paid a little bit more than for slot number 2, even though it just saved you microseconds.
Wow.
The increase in latency right now, or like the increase in technology, the development of technology to decrease latency over the last 30, 50 years has just been incredible. You look at the development, the speed of communication I'm talking, go from the telegraph to the telephone to fiber optics. And now we're talking about decreasing latency by orders of magnitude down to milliseconds and while increasing bandwidth, so you're going to have instantaneous video, full HD video across the planet. It's going to be incredible.
there wasn't really an improvement in the latency front in past 15 years. I mean, ever since fiber became common,
Exactly.
there was just no way to make
wall. You can't make it faster than faster.
travel faster in the glass medium, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
now there is this big invention coming on. It's like if we send light in a vacuum or almost vacuum called the outer space, it's gonna be faster than, even though the route is going to be longer.
Yes.
But
latency is important though, because that is one of the banning criteria, or not banning, but muting criteria on the new protocol. Not new, but it's been added to the protocol on Ouroboros and on the ProleteR protocol. So if someone's node, if you're running a Jormungandr node and there's too much latency, it's going to get ignored, I guess is a good word for it.
Well, it's first gonna get quarantined, and then if the misbehavior continues, then it's gonna get kicked out of the network topology. Yes.
Yeah, and so we'll have to look at what those latency parameters are, and they'll have to be tested and adjusted. And not to derail from the satellite, high-speed satellite data, and then roll it back into the stake pools. It's very relevant because that high speed, low latency on the satellites it's going to be very useful. Right now, 5G is faster than fiber. 5G can run at 1.2 gigabits and common fiber is 1 gigabit. So you got 200 megabits faster with 5G.
I can run 100 gigabits over a multimode fiber.
Well, you can, but can you plug it into the side of the average building that's running a node? Maybe, right? You can. But what I'm saying, the average fibers that run at about a gigabit to local business or local facilities, but 5G, one 5G connection in the right place can exceed one gig. But yeah, multi-mode fiber is what, 100 gigabytes?
But the gigabit limit for the fiber, it's a business decision. It's not a technical limitation.
Right. And right now, Jormungandr, as of today, as of RC7, is only consuming kilobytes of data, of bandwidth, kilobytes per second.
Until there will be sharding, there is no reason for it to be very capacity intensive. So I actually did the calculation, and you will need about 6 megabits uplink and downlink in order to operate the pool.
Cool.
I haven't calculated the latency, but
that's not bad at all.
6 megabits is the requirement until there is sharding, with the given size of the block and with the given headers and everything.
All right.
I actually came up with number like 5.6. So let's give that 0.4 megabits to TCP/IP overhead. Okay.
My node was using between 6 and 10 megabits per second last week. This week, it's between 1 and 3 megabits per second. After RC7, it dropped even below that. It went down into the kilobits per second at idle, and then it would spike up to the megabits per second. But on average, it was below the megabits per second, averaged out.
Yeah.
But it has these bursts. Every 10 seconds, there's a huge burst of speed. It needs several megabits.
Because currently the blocks are still not distributed, although the new blocks are produced every 2 seconds, for some reason they get propagated through the network in bursts. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that I hope will be fixed before we go to the incentivized testnet.
Do you think it needs fixed, or is it a feature?
I really
no, we did that on purpose.
I really hope it's a bug and it gets fixed. I mean, there's been great improvements on that, because before that you could see bursts like every 10 minutes. Now you see them every 10 seconds. So let's wait for smooth flow every 2 seconds. That's how the protocol should behave according to the specification, right? If the network topology is correct.
I'm glad you know that, optimal. Mark. I'm glad you know that. I read it somewhere, but I don't remember what it was. Okay, we're coming up on that time, Philippe.
Yes.
We'll let Mark and OCG, you guys can tell us anything else you had to add. What else,
yes.
Philippe? What do you want to do to wrap this up?
can we get some final thoughts from Mark and Old Crypto Geek, maybe about the landscape that they see stake pools going towards, and maybe a little bit more about their stake pool, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, I wonder if there are people who are not in the group who, on like Telegram and stuff, who are planning to run a pool on, let's say, a commercial scale or a commercial quality, or if people who we got in the Telegram are all the people who are planning on it. I mean, we have this private testnet group, right? I just wonder if there are more of private testnet groups and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up, certainly, because
yeah,
there's 200 EOS nodes out there, and the people that operate those, they could certainly run a Cardano node as well.
Oh yeah, probably on the same hardware.
Yeah. OCG, what do you got?
That's one of the thing when we discussed, like, let's use industry grade hardware, right? Mm-hmm. It's Cardano or POS protocols. They are so efficient that you're gonna buy the lowest spec server, and you're still gonna have lots of headroom, so you can run a Cardano node, EOS node, Ethereum node. After they, of course, in 10 years transition to the POS.
Yes.
So yeah, there's definitely an opportunity to use virtualization and operate multiple nodes for multiple network on the same physical hardware, and improve your financials.
Absolutely.
Cool. Go ahead.
No, I agree 100% what Mark just said.
There are also a lot of staking websites out there that offer a lot of turnkey staking solutions for their customers, and they're doing a whole bunch of different tokens and very obscure tokens. This well-known tokens as well, but they're probably going to want to add Cardano as well if it's so easy to the requirements are not that high to run a node for Cardano. So I don't know why they wouldn't add it to their portfolio or their platform, especially when there are a lot of no-name tokens on their website.
Yeah. I've got one last question and we'll wrap up.
Okay.
Old Crypto Geek, what is your avatar? I've always wondered what that is. It confuses me when I look at it. What am I looking at?
I can't tell you, Rick, because I've got a running offer right now for, I can't remember. I'd have to search back in the Telegram chats, but I offered a couple hundred ADA for the first person that could figure it out.
Oh, I did not know that. I'm going to have to figure that out. I'm going to take you up on that. I'll take you up on that. And I'll take you up on another thing. I've said this before. I hope the Rock Pi thing works out. If IOHK can pull it off, that's awesome. I'm skeptical, but if they do, I will eat something undesirable.
It's not really...
what is IOHK planning with the Rock Pi?
It's got nothing to do with the IOHK, really. It's Marcus Goofler's project, right?
Oh, yeah, it's Marcus.
I think it's a good look for IOHK that their protocol could run on a Rock Pi.
Definitely.
It's good marketing. It's good, but it's not a long-term solution for the network. But it's a good short-term look at this. Look what we can do.
Philippe,
as we spoke, that launching the satellites would cost about $500,000, 300K of that maybe R&D, 200K maybe the launch. Designing something as a Rock Pi that would have all the features of actual industry quality standards. Mm-hmm. It would be like $40,000 US dollars or euros.
It's about the architecture that it's built on. It that ARM 64 technology is the key here.
Yeah. We'll see how they develop this, and it should be interesting to see what materializes from this in the future.
Yeah, and whatever it is, it's. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, Marcus said that he's working with the European suppliers as well to sell it. So as soon as it becomes available on some marketplace in the EU, I'm definitely gonna buy one, just to have it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to order it from China, not because I would be afraid of some spyware or whatever, as the guys on Reddit pointed out, but just because I don't want to deal with the bloody customs.
Well, whatever the solution is with the rock pies, I would rather see Cardano run on a rock pie than to see Cardano be a burning, flaming warehouse like some of those Bitcoin mining farm warehouses that just burst into flames. So, yeah, I'll take the rock pie over the flaming warehouse. Yeah. All right, that's all I got for you guys. Philippe, what do you got, buddy?
All right, so thank you to both of you, Old Crypto Geek and Mark. Thank you for showing up on the podcast. We really appreciate you. We had a good conversation. I think we can make this a series, so let's do this again sometime. You're always welcome on the podcast. Thank you for joining us. Do you have any last words for the viewers of the Cardano Effect, Mark?
I got nothing.
Old Crypto Geek?
Yeah, well, it's I just have a lot of fun helping everybody out in the Telegram rooms, and it's a great community. I'm really happy to be part of it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. And until the next episode of the Cardano Effect, bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.